What's up, guys? Welcome to Still Talk with My Ex. I'm Brandon.
I'm Ariel.
Today, we're back again with another podcast. We're super excited again. Hopefully, you all are doing well, enjoying life, and living it to the fullest. I know that's our motto on this channel. All right, so last week we gave you all two videos. One was we asked each other some awkward questions, got into some really fun but awkward things between Ariel and myself as exes. We also gave you all a really kind of more serious topic on marriage and all. You probably saw that come through. So hopefully that was good for you as well too. Today, y'all know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about relationships again. That's
Again.
Exactly. But on this time, we'll kind of enlist a few things that like a couple of arguments. And the thing to note is that every couple argues, right? It's a part of your individualities. It's a part of, you all having different ideals and they kind of coming together and they're trying to figure out like, I don't agree the way that you think, or I don't think the way that you think, and how do I kind of assess that? And so it's okay to know that you will have disagreements. The thing is just like how to know when it's something that is not sort of reconcilable, right? I think there's certain arguments that if it's recurring, it may not be working out. So we'll just kind of talk about how to navigate through those things, what we would do in some of those occasions, because obviously, we have a lot to say about some of these topics. So guys, without further ado, I want to get right into it. So choosing the past or the future. Sometimes, Ariel, in relationships, people have a hard time holding on to this idea that you can either have the past or the future. If I had to say, like, sometimes and this is like a subtopic to this one, don't compare your past ex to your future, person that you're with now, because it's unrealistic and it's dang on show not healthy, right? So I always think about, you're with this person now, which means that the person that you are today has decided to be with this person. The core values that you have, the mentality that you have, maybe the economic status that you are, has decided to be with this person today. Or you could have stayed with the person that you was with yesterday. You know what I mean? So having to decide how to sort of navigate through, accepting that this is the person that you've chosen the present time. Your ideals haven't changed. They obviously align with you. So maybe trying to, kind of find your voice and find some commonality can be good in that. The other part that I do want to make mention to, because this happens in a lot of relationships as well too, between the past and the future. Stop bringing up arguments that have, if you've forgiven the person, if they've forgiven you, you gotta like let it go, unless you feel like you cannot move on. You know what I mean? If you feel like you can't move on from something and it's just beyond the pale of what you could ever imagine, if there was maybe infidelity or a breach of trust, or, it was verbally abusive or hopefully not physically abusive, then, you got to get out of it and let it go, extricate yourself. But I think it's important, Ariel, to know that like you got to make a decision. You can't have both.
Yeah, I think in the whole process of it, like, I agree with you. There's just something to be said about the fact that you are holding on, or someone in the relationship may be holding on to what has been and not really looking at what could be, or they're looking at what could be and where they are now, and they're just like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. And I mean, again, be truthful and honest with yourself about whether or not this is the case. But I do agree with you in this standpoint of, don't compare your past with your future, or your past with your present, because you just kind of end up on a slippery slope of shoulda, coulda, wouldas, what I wanted versus what I got, X, Y, and Z, and blah, 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 blah. And it just doesn't really quite shake out the way that you planned. But I mean, that's life. Life doesn't really shake out the way that you plan, because, here we are, podcasting with exes. Who would have thought? Not me, but that's a whole situation. So I think, and even if you are in a relationship with someone where you actually do that too, of comparing your past and your future, I think it's something where you just want to kind of take a look at it and quit the comparison, and actually just kind of enjoy the individual and the evolution of both of you all. I think, and having conversations with both of my parents, who are married for over 10 years, the bigger thing that they both told me is that, like, you married this person kind of like you said, like with the present perception, or you select this person in a relationship based on the present perception and the present attraction of what you have. But over time, this person evolves and you evolve and you both change, and it could be at the same rate or it could be different. But the reality of the situation is you can't pine over who you guys were in a time span of 10 years ago versus now. You are who you are now. And it's, I think it's more so of the acceptance of, do I really want to continue to grow and evolve and love this person in the process of where they are versus, where we were.
Absolutely. I agree. You got to make a decision. Even in your own life, we can't hold on to the past because we can't get it back. So make that decision and be comfortable with standing in that truth, because I think even in a relationship dynamic, it's hard. You know what I mean? You may not want to acknowledge the inconsistencies and some of the contrast. And to Ariel's point about sort of how we all evolve, it's okay. You know what I mean? And if you want to compare, just make sure that you're doing it from a place of, it's non-accusatory. It's okay to say, someone I dated in the past used to be more aware of, the fact that my birthday came around this time and you never remembered it. It's okay to use certain great qualities, you know what I mean, to compare them, because if that's a part of your individual, then that's fine. But I think when you start to kind of compare certain things and like, they did it this way and they did it this way, when it gets down to like these nitty gritty things that these things yield no fruit, then that's when it becomes kind of petty. We don't want to be petty on this channel. We want to be adults. So that's what we're trying to tell you all, to be able to choose the past or the future. Which one? I know y'all can make the best decision.
To go back to that, I think too, like, again, to not be petty, what you don't want to do is put that person who you are currently in a relationship with in a predicament where they're looking at you like, well, why you ain't still with them? Or why are you, so why are you with me if you still thinking about X, Y, and Z? Like, maybe you should take some time and you can be that individual that throws up the flag and says, you know what, flag on the play. This is the last time you compared me to so-and-so. And, we could be great. We have the potential to be great, but you obviously have some things that you need to work on. So we need to separate for a season and you figure this out. And either you're okay with being with me or you still want to be with so-and-so. Either way, I'm good, but I just really need you to figure that out. You as the individual who's being compared, you also have power in this to make a decision and say, you know what, I'm nobody's, second, or I'm not gonna subject myself to this. So I'll leave you be to figure this out. If you decide that you want to continue on with me, that's fine. But I need to see change behavior before I proceed forward. And if you decide to go back to that individual, that is also okay. And be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking as you were talking, Ariel, because I agreed. And if you are the person who has made the offense and you expect the person to turn a new leaf in 2 days, you have to kind of be a bit more aware too, that it may take them some time. So the comparison may come up only as sort of a knee-jerk reaction because they may be in pain or they may be in still remembrance of what you've done, even after you've asked for forgiveness, and you may have atoned as well too, So definitely try to see it from both sides and lenses, but don't ever make it to where it's like it's something that's not healthy. We don't want you all staying in anything that's not healthy at all, because that's not a great thing at the end of the day.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing to that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. I think, like you said, if you're the person who's causing an offense, you got to give the person who you've offended the time to heal. And if you are the one who has been offended, what you have to do is feel your feelings. It's your right to do so. But at the end of feeling your feelings, what you want to do is you actually want to acknowledge the forgiveness and then walk in that. And you don't want to continue to throw this offense back in your person's face because it's only going to be so long. Even if they have done wrong, even if they sat in that seat of offense, they're not going to take too many times of you throwing back in their face, well, you did this in X, Y, and Z. So even saying all of that to say, even if you are in pain and you are processing out of that, what you don't want to do is continue to bash the person who you love, who you decided to stay with, who you are deciding to forgive, over the head consistently with their offense, especially if you guys have both made the effort and the promise to move forward.
Exactly. So that's why it's so important, guys. Past, a future. And even with that, you may have to leave, you know, and you got to be okay with that as well, too, when it means walking in forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to stay. Sometimes you have to leave. So don't be afraid to step out on faith if that's your decision.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we wanted to discuss is core values in a relationship. That's a huge thing. I am somebody who is a traditionalist. I'm really conservative. A lot of my friends probably think that I'm archaic in the way that I live, because I'm really, really just traditional and very much conservative in my values. And so not the conservative principles that the Republican Party has. So let me do just a disclaimer there, because this is something different. I had to get that out. But in terms of just like pro-family, I am, you know, pro-empathy. My faith is important to me. You know, I love, you know, all of these things. You know, marriage and these ideals. All of those things are important to me. And I think those are the things that ultimately will allow you to be in a healthy space with the person that you choose to be in a healthy space with. And sometimes I've seen my friends give up core values to try to compromise the relationship dynamic. And I always say, like, there are certain things that you cannot give up. You know, giving up for me, like core values, is giving up the fabric of what I believe in. You know, it's the tenets of how I was raised. And so giving up that would mean I would be someone different. I'd be completely someone else's robot. I'd be completely, you know, not the person who I'm authentically meant to be. And so a lot of the times when I have seen my friends sort of kowtow to giving up their values, it has not yielded. Almost every single one of my friends, it has not yielded them any fruit that would be long lasting in their relationships. And that can be in friendships as well too. You know, when sometimes we want to compromise in terms of, well, maybe I don't do it like this, or maybe I don't do it this way, you know, and maybe I can try to give this up for that. And it's like, those things have long lasting effect on your future, you know, or the stability of that relationship. So I just always tell people, Ariel, to know your truth, because you don't want someone else to define it for you. Thus, I always say this: if you allow someone else to define your truth, then you live a lie in your own ability, and that's not authentically living.
That's really good. I'm reminded of a conversation in terms of, because I feel like in this space that we're in, we're talking about core values. I think that there is a big difference in core values versus something that you can compromise on. So your core values are your non-negotiables, your standards. They are what they are. If you said that you want a man who loves Jesus, then you ain't got no business going out and looking for trying to date somebody who's agnostic. Like if you know that you are someone who is pro-family, or if you are someone who wants to expand your family later, then you ain't got no business dating nobody who's like, I don't want kids, point blank, period, and that's the end of that. So I think that there is, versus, okay, so he loves Jesus, he wants kids, but his dressing and his style may not be up to par the way you think that it should. Like, you can compromise on that. Like, y'all can have a conversation, talk about going shopping, things that you would like to see him in, and vice versa, what he would like to see you in. Or interests. Like, he may like anime and cosplay, and you are R&B and live music. At some point, y'all are gonna have to kind of compromise on your interests. You go to, some type of con, Star Wars con or whatever, and he'll come to an SWV concert with you. Like, there's a difference between the core values and the compromisable interests that you all have. And I think there's nothing wrong with setting your standards and your standards being your standards, but also realizing when you are leaning on your standards to, I won't say to be difficult, but you're leaning on your standards as a methodology of like, well, I shouldn't have to compromise who I am. Like, no, you actually do, but be mindful of the things that you are compromising on. Those core things, those core values, the things that make you don't. But everything else, in terms of somebody brings to your attention, oh, you selfish. Well, no, that's just who I am. No, you can compromise that. Like, you can work through it.
Yeah. And I think the distinction and the difference is the behavior and the person. Certain things are a state of beings, you know what I mean? And then, then there is, like, people say, I feel bad. Okay, that's a feeling, that you have. That's a state of being, but it's not who you are.
Right.
And I think a lot of it has to do with identification. Nobody can, I always tell people, my goal is not never to let anybody define who I am, by any metric, how I view the world, how I view education, how I view issues that affect my community and the Black community. These things, my faith, top of the list, these are things that are innate. So I think that you do have to, you can be rooted because those are your identity. Those are the things that make you you. And then the compromise in the terms of, like Ariel was mentioning, if she doesn't like movies or he doesn't like movies, and you might want to get to know, those are things that can be worked out, you know what I mean? Which I think is extremely important to know. You can always kind of find commonality because you will need to. That's a part of the compromise. You know what I mean? That whole compromise piece. But it doesn't have to be to your identity. It doesn't have to change who you are and your moral compass. And I think sometimes how the prison that you live in. So if you're someone who loves God and you don't want to go to a 2 Chainz concert, but they like that kind of music, you can stand in your identity and you can say, no, that's just not me. You know what I mean? I'm somebody, and the only reason why I say this is because I'm somebody who there is a segment of people that I have dated who has always tried to kind of get me to explore explore this different element, because it was like, you're so cookie cutter, you're so goody two shoes, you know what I mean? And it was more of a conquest to get me out of my character, you know what I mean? And it wasn't necessarily to expose me to something different. It was more so to try to get me moved into a direction that was not really where I needed to be, basically. And so identity is important. And we always talk about on this channel, identification, because if you have identity, even when it comes time to compromise, your true identity that is rooted, hopefully, in common sense, integrity, hopefully those things will be made manifest. You know what I mean? So think about those things when it comes to sort of these core values, which is why I make the difference between values, core values, the tenets of who you are, how you comport yourself, you know what I mean? Family, those things. The other things you can always kind of groom in, but if you have identification, then your core values they'll all kind of come back to that. And you won't have to feel so, you won't have an ilk, about the decision that you compromise in, because you feel like, you know what, no, I stood in my truth.
Yeah. I think that's the brilliance and the importance of getting to know yourself before you jump into a relationship or before you start to date, to just kind of solidify and hone in on who am I, and figure out your identity, get to know who you are and your core values and what you are just like, nope, can't compromise on this, and put it in your core values section. But again, it needs to be something that does resonate with your identity. Like you said, you're not going to 2 Chainz concert, point blank, period, end of discussion. However, maybe if it's something where your partner, if they're trying to date you, they get to know you and they ask you, well, what type of music do you like? And would you enjoy going to something in terms of like live music? Then it's something where now and if they hear you and you're like, okay, well, I like this or I like that. And then they say, okay, well, what do you think about going to see this person? That's where the compromise comes in, not just to make somebody go and do something just because you want them to do it. It's more so of, because sometimes you hear the things of like, I don't want you to do it just because I told you to do it. I want you to do it because you want to do it. Like that, that comes along in that compromise phase. Like try to get to know somebody and what their hard no's are. But also get to know yourself and figure out what your hard no's are. If you already know that you're not an adrenaline junkie, but the person that you love loves to go base jumping, and you're just like, hard no, I can't do it. We gotta compromise elsewhere. You have to figure it out.
Figure it out, absolutely. And another thing, guys, don't weaponize the fact that you do have these core values, because sometimes we innately do that. Because I confess up, I'm somebody who in the past I would be like, is this person dumb? Like, what is wrong with them? Because they did not think the way that I did. And so in a way, you sort of, you look at them, in a different way that doesn't reflect, this sort of this intrinsic value that they bring to the table. Just because it's not necessarily your idea doesn't mean that it's trash always. Careful, doesn't mean that it's trash always. Again, to Ariel's point, you should know who you are and get to know your identity. But I agree that it's important not to weaponize, or I believe it's not important to weaponize the fact that you have core values. And a lot of the times I would suggest not forcing those things on people. Allow your values to make manifest on whatever the relationship dynamic will be. It will play itself out. I always tell people that keep living your truth, and their truth will be illuminated as well too. But don't lose your core values for nobody, because if you don't have them, the old folks say if you don't stand for anything, or if you don't stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. So yeah. I still believe in that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. The next thing I want to talk about, or we want to discuss, is ultimatums.
Just do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Find the opposite direction and run, because essentially they never work. They don't work. You're dealing with a whole nother, and I don't want to step on your space, but I just really feel that, like, do not approach somebody saying you're gonna do this, or I'm gonna leave, or you're gonna do that and I'm gonna leave. And what you quickly find out is whether or not you're bluffing or not, and if they're gonna call you on your bluff, or if you're dealing with a bluffer at all. Because you cannot just approach somebody. And I have a really good example. One of my cousins was married to this woman. He treated her well. She was on a girls' trip with her friends. He dropped a couple of $1,000 on her trip, and she called him back and she was like, hey, I need some more money. He was like, babe, I gave you, I'm not gonna be explicit about the amount of money, but he gave her a nice amount of money to go on this trip. And she's halfway through it and she's like, yeah, but I need some more. And he's like, no, I'm not sending you anymore because of X, Y, and Z. So she called herself going to a lawyer, drawing up some papers, and was gonna call his bluff. And one thing she didn't realize about my cousin is that he don't bluff, and he signed those papers and gave her what she quote unquote thought she wanted. And she's like, no, I just want, no, I was just playing. I just wanted you to do what I wanted you to do when I wanted you to do it. No, do not. Again, do not collect $200. Do not pass go. This is not a thing. First and foremost, people do not operate by way of what we feel like they should. Like the perspectives and things like that we feel like that we have, or how we would approach approach a situation or an argument is not the way that someone else would. The way that we feel like we would handle someone is not necessarily the way that others will handle us. We can't expect people to behave in the way that we behave because it's just not fair. It's not fair. And to put ultimatums to say, well, I would do it so you would, or if you don't do it, I'm leaving. That's the quickest way to cut somebody out of your life, because now you created a space that is not safe, and a space that is not secure for that individual to really just like make decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a slippery slope. Because again, this is resting on the balance that this is another human,
yes,
another adult who is able to make their own decisions, who have their own concept of life and living, and everyone has the autonomy to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when an individual has contrived an ultimatum, and the reason why I say contrived is because you would have, I always say things are circumstantial, if you cheat, I'll leave you. I mean that. So that's fine. But I think when you talk about spaces, and again, this kind of goes back to this compromise and this kind of core value issue. When you give somebody an ultimatum and this outcome is attached, that they may leave you, they may fold and do it your way. But I think what happens is that you set the wrong precedent for the relationship, because it's not supposed to be do what I say. It's no, let me share my reality with you. Let me share how this makes me feel. Let me break out my, communication skills and kind of really let you know, like elaborately, like, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, or I felt that you could have done this better. Anytime that you start going to ultimatum, it's usually toward it takes you to the tail end of it's over. It takes you to, we about to wrap, you know what I mean? And again, from someone who used to give people a lot of ultimatums, I give my friends ultimatums, and a lot of the times, the fear, if someone really loves you, of them losing you, it will allow them to be like, okay, well, let me just think about this, you know what I mean? But I think it's how you present it, do you have every right to say, hey, if you cheat on me, I'm gonna leave you? Yes. But if you say, if you leave this ice cream out again, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? Or if you don't give me some more money, I'm out of here. I think those things start to really affect the way that a person, sees you and they view you. And no one wants, someone to be seen as this authoritarian person. And if you are someone or authoritative person, if you are someone who has an iron fist in the relationship, that's not a great thing, because they will see you as parent. And like I said before, you can't parent an adult. You could try, but it's exhausting, and it definitely doesn't work, So before you start throwing out ultimatums and you start, telling people what to do, just remember there are actions to that. And there are outcomes to that, and you may not like the outcome, and that person may actually call your bluff if they about that life, which they may be, you know what I mean? So definitely consider exploring all outcomes, and consider trying to communicate, without the ultimatum. And you can say, hey, if this happens, this is my reaction. I just want to let you know that, and don't put the contingency on them. Just let them know what you're going to do. That's all you can do.
Yeah, I think at the end of this, like you said, it's an authoritarian move, and ultimately it's a move of control. Because like you say, you're trying to control another adult into doing what you want them to do. And the reality of the situation is, if God gave humans free will, who are we to really just try to make someone bend to our will? They won't, because they've grown up with different backgrounds, different perceptions, different ways of receiving and processing information. And essentially you can't force another human being to do what you want them to do. So like you said, the workout to that is, or the resolution to that would be to actually communicate your vulnerabilities of, this would hurt my feelings if you do this, as opposed to, well, if you do this, I'm leaving and I'm gone. Because you may just catch that one who's like, well, let me help you pack your bags.
This is for you.
Exactly. I just do a dub out on y'all. So think about that. Definitely think about that. Guys, we have hope that you have enjoyed this segment. I know we have. We've talked about some very thought-provoking things, and hopefully, you all have taken some things from this and you'll use them in your relationships. And again, don't use stuff as a sword or weaponize it, but just remember, you can obviously take some of these things that can help, strengthen the pillar of your relationship. But as always, we love y'all. We got to get up out of here. Like, comment, subscribe. And we'll see you all next time. Peace. Love you.
Bye.